Welcome into the latest episode of the 5 Reasons podcast. No music again today. Chris Whittingham, as we've told you on previous podcasts, fled to England because he knew that all this stuff was going to be happening in South Florida sports. So I have been going it alone here the past few days. And, of course, that ended up being the busiest day of the entire damn South Florida sports year. December 30th, we had a coach who retired after a lot of pressure from the public in Mark Richt. Then later in the day, we had a coach who was leaving for Temple who decided to come back after the University of Miami pursued him in Manny Diaz, now the new head coach of the Miami Hurricanes. And then today, earlier today, Steve Ross decides to fire his head coach of 3 seasons, Adam Gase, and we'll see who the next coach is, but has decided also to reassign Mike Tannebaum and put Chris Greer in charge of the entire operation. So a lot has happened over the past 24 hours, and today I'm going to be joined by Luis Zabala. You've heard him on our Patreon feed. He's been a cameraman for CBS4 for a long time. He goes to all of the big events and was at the Dolphin debacle yesterday up in Buffalo where they finished their season 7-9. So we'll get to Wee, as we call him, in a second here, or the GOAT. But first, I want to tell you about a couple of the sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, the sponsors of this podcast. We're going to start here with Brunt Insurance, where you can find all of your protection under one roof. I can speak to this because I've been working with Greg on my own insurance, and he saved me about $700 on my car and on my condo just in the past week. So you definitely should give Greg a call. He offers home, auto, commercial, and life insurance, and he's licensed to write insurance for the entire state of Florida. That's Pensacola all the way down to the Keys, which is where Louis comes to us today from. Multiple carriers for all product lines to ensure you're paying the lowest rate in your area. Also, he is a proud sponsor of the Homes for Heroes program, which offers special discounts for first responders, teachers, military, and healthcare professionals. So here's where you need to call. Call Greg, again, big Miami sports fan, 954-589-2204. That's 954-589-2204. Or go to Brunt, that's B-R-U-N-T, insurance.com. You also know about one of the other great sponsors, which is Doral Toyota. They've been with us almost since the beginning here, so we appreciate it. And it's a great place to go if you're looking for a new or used car. You can find all of your favorite Toyota models. Also find certified pre-owned vehicles. They're located at 9775 Northwest 12th Street, which is a few blocks from International and Dolphin malls. Experience the Doral difference. That means 4 years of complimentary maintenance and roadside assistance on all new vehicles. In-house financing is also available if you got credit-related issues. And here's the big thing. If you mention 5 Reasons when you stop into the dealership or you call 305-680-1129, they will set you up with a dedicated manager. So not some salesperson trying to sell you a car to get the numbers for the month or something like that. You will work with a dedicated manager if you mention 5 Reasons. So stop in 9775 Northwest 12th Street or DoralToyota.com. Vamos. Let's go. All right, now let's get to the episode here, and we're going to talk about 2 different things here, Louis. Yesterday you were in Buffalo. We saw the pictures on your Instagram account, and we apologize for you having to sit through that. Let's start. We're going to get to Manny Diaz in a second. Let's circle back to that. But you were on the.
Do you want me to hold on? He's the first. I mean, you don't have no music. You want me to sing? Because we could go. We need some circus music, right, for these last 24 hours?
We do. Is that for Steve Ross, Adam Gase, Mike Tannenbaum, Mark Richt, or all of them?
The whole gang. The whole gang.
Just throw them in the clown car. All of them together. Well, again, I felt bad for you guys because I've been up to Buffalo at this time of year when Dolphin games haven't meant anything, and so I see these bad photos from the hotel window that you were posting yesterday of the snow. Yeah. I see Omar Kelly and I believe it was Omar and might have been Joe Shad and Chris Perkins, like ready to jump into Niagara Falls. They were taking a group picture together. It's very, very sad.
Yeah, we went to dinner. We all went to dinner. We had a nice dinner, black and blue. It was very nice. Everyone had the steaks. Yeah, it was like the Last Supper, and everything was being discussed, as you could imagine. But the one thing that was discussed was that Adam Beasley, of course, made everyone split the wine charge after he ordered the bottles. But anyway, that's okay. We'll move on from that.
Well, he's on a Herald salary, though. We know how that works. You know, it's,
they got to cut the budget.
They're cutting the budget. So all right. So take me through it a little bit. So after you guys have dinner yesterday, which is sort of a tradition right before the end of the season, or a lot of road games on Saturday nights, you go to the stadium. you were telling me before we came on about some of the interactions that you saw between Adam Gase and Steve Ross. So because I think that plays into a lot of what we're going to talk about today. And also we've got some new tweets from @CK Parrott. That's Chris Kaufman of our 3 Yards Per Carry podcast, which is the stuff I've been hinting at for the past few days about the breakdown in relationship between Gase and his players. You saw a breakdown in a relationship between Gase and the owner.
Well, what I've been noticing about Adam is that Adam is very hard-headed. I mean, a lot of head coaches are hard-headed. But when it comes to Adam, I like Adam. First of all, let me tell you, I believe that he's a very, very smart offensive coach. But the problems that he's having, which he's learning as a first-time head coach, is that the NFL, you gotta kind of get along with certain players for the reason of they're your best assets. Like when your best players aren't on the same page with you, and you're going to have problems in the NFL. This is not college where you can bring up the second string guy when you've recruited a bunch of 5-star guys. I mean, look at the perfect example. And it's interesting that Adam Gase used to refer to Nick Saban a lot. Like he coached under Saban. I coached under Saban. Well, guess what? Nick Saban couldn't do it in the NFL. Why? Because he couldn't get relationships with players to work because he wanted to be the authoritative figure, which a lot of NFL coaches could be, but you got to treat people like men sometimes, you know? And you have to treat them as assets. If your best assets don't want to work for you, you're in trouble in the NFL because everybody's talented. It's getting the talent out of those people that's the most important thing. And I think with Adam Gase, I think that's what happened. He couldn't get along with certain players, and then he kept getting questioned, and then he didn't like to be questioned. And then when Stephen Ross, you know, I think when that stuff leaked out, some of that stuff about Lamar Jackson, and by the way, I was advocating for Lamar Jackson from the start. If you're going to draft low in the first round, that was the perfect pick. And I think a lot of the problems with what happened with Gase and what happened here is a lot of the problems happened that he attached himself to Tannehill. He really thought that he can get Tannehill to get to that next level. And from the jump, we saw that Tannehill didn't have it. He doesn't have it. And I've discussed it with a lot of people who know a hell of a lot more about playing quarterback in the NFL than me. And when those type of people are telling you the guy doesn't have it, then I trust those kind of people. So getting back to what happened with the relationship, this is stuff that I observed. I know that Stephen Ross flew in the same morning to Buffalo with a few people, and there was no interaction with the head coach. And usually, I mean, let's face it, it's the last game of the season. Okay, you're either going to go 8-8 or 7-9, and who cares? You're not evaluating anything on the last game. All right, I don't care what people say. You know, Stephen Ross said he made up his mind last night, right? Last night, this morning. Well, it was obvious that I don't think Adam Gase wanted to come back. You know, and the reason I say that is because you see the owner on the sidelines, and at least you go say hi. You know what I mean? I mean, you know there's cameras there. You know there's people around. You know it's a hot topic. You go up and you're cordial. You're cordial with your boss. Hello, how you doing? Boom. It doesn't have to be a major, conversation or anything. And to me, I think with Adam Gase, this has been coming for a couple of weeks already. You know, I specifically waited for him at the end of warmups to go over to the sideline to get the shot of him shaking the owner's hand, right? Didn't happen. He ran straight in. He ran straight into the locker room pregame. Then postgame, I got to do the postgame show, so I got to set up early in the interview room, and I had my stuff in there, and the interview room's locked. All right, and we walk up, and they're like, "No, the owner doesn't want anybody in this room," and it's a room adjacent to the locker room. So, okay, now what's everybody thinking? Which is what everybody was thinking, right? Tannebaum's gone or Matt Burke is gone. I thought they probably should have held on to Gase because, 3 years, if you really want to rebuild, which is what Stephen Ross hinted at today in the press conference, if you want to start from scratch and rebuild, at least you have a good offensive mind who maybe is learning on the job, you know what I mean? And that's what you hired. You hired a guy who's going to learn on the job because he'd never been a head coach before. So I don't know if I would have given him the benefit of the doubt, but knowing now that the relationship had probably soured, and maybe even Adam brought this upon himself, then I think Stephen Ross had to go with this decision. The weirdest thing to me is, why is Tannebaum still here, and what is he exactly going to be doing now?
Well, he's office space essentially. I mean, they're going to be moving his stapler around. Look, we're going to part company a little bit on Gase on the offensive thing. To me, he had 3 years. It's enough time. I'm not saying he won't succeed somewhere else. I do think your second point on the relationship is the one that I really want to hit on, because I do think that's what drove this over the edge. Here's some tweets from some guys in our network, and I can tell you, I talked to Craig Mish yesterday, who basically told me kind of what was coming. We were trying to figure out how to get it out there. Craig hosts our Swings and Mishes Marlins podcast, but he has connections inside a lot of buildings around here. His tweet a couple hours ago, I'm told that the falling out of Gase and Ross began after the loss to the Colts. Ross rarely chats after, tried to talk to Gase post-game, and Gase, from what I was told, blew him off and told him not now in less kind words.
I could see that, and that Ethan, and that goes back to him being so hard-headed, you know. But I believe, and I've been saying this, people learn, which is why what you said, he may be a good head coach in the future somewhere, and it might happen real quick if he goes to a team that has a good quarterback. You know what I'm saying? But his patience, man, and there were certain things that he did, and I'd be like, man, why are you doing that? Just, you know, just grow, try to grow. Yeah, maybe you think you're the smartest guy in the room, but guess what? If you're the smartest guy in the room, you need another room, right? You need to go somewhere where you have people that can help you. And I guess he felt that he didn't need that, you know? And that relationship, when you have an owner, that guy owns the team. He can do whatever the hell he wants.
Right.
And you're not above that guy. All these head coaches think that everything they do, like you know, they don't have people by. I don't think a lot of these head coaches that these things happen to, I don't think they have no people next to them. You know what I mean? Somebody that says, dude, you can't do that. You know, you got to do this. And if the guy says, well, I'm doing this anyway, I go, well, I'm telling you, you're not doing this. It's my job to tell you that this is not what we do. I think these guys, and I'm judging from a media standpoint, all right? From the stuff that I had to, you know, deal with, where I was like, all right, I'm in no position to tell the guy anything. I'm just here. You know what I'm saying? But there are people in position to tell him certain things that never did. And maybe that's where he went wrong, you know. Because,
or Louis, maybe they did, and he didn't want to hear it. Because one of the theories that CK has, and I sort of caught on to this the last 3 weeks. I mean, you got to realize the guys on my network have been all over me for bashing Gase for the last few weeks, and all of them, to a degree, came around in the last 3 weeks. And what flipped CK on it was not the results. It was the lack of accountability. He talked like somebody who wanted to get fired the last 3 weeks.
Exactly. That's exactly my point.
He blamed the road record on facing hot teams. I mean, I've covered this over and over here. He blamed injuries. Yesterday, your old partner there, Kim, asked him after the game a very general question. I mean, Kim has to ask these questions at the beginning of the press conference, obviously, and he asked him a very general question about when he was going to go back and reevaluate the season. You know, what would he think about? And he began to tick off the names of every player he didn't have available to him over the last 2 weeks. Like, that is a guy who either, and as I said last night, I had Uptown on our pod, and I said, look, there's a couple of things here. Either he's totally tone deaf, which I don't believe he is, okay? No. Or two, okay, he was trying to separate himself from Tannebaum, but I believe that was already happening. Or
that's what was happening there. That's what's happening there with that.
Right. But I also think, three, I think he wanted to get fired. Like, you don't make those kind of comments. And I want to get to your thing about the players here, because we started to see this last night. Like, nobody defended him. Nobody. There were players who had the option to support the coaching staff, and none of them did it. And I want to read you this tweet from CK this morning. You follow him at CK Parrott. Hear him on 3 Yards Per Carry, which should be an interesting episode that they're posting later tonight. So what do I hear? I heard a surprising number of veterans, including surprising in capital letters, ones like Frank Gore, Kenny Stills, and especially Cameron Wake, all rose up and disavowed Gase privately. Wake and Stills directly to Steve Ross. Kenyon Drake wanted a trade if Gase remained. I don't know if you saw his Instagram post last night, which Jay Ajayi commented on, but Gase made it pretty clear. He said next, okay? And I mean, I think most people thought it meant Gase. So this is basically what we're talking about here, okay? And this one additional, this gets to your comment about Ross. He says, Gase was persona non grata to many people inside and outside the organization by the end. His relationship with Steve Ross had fallen to the point where they'd barely spoken in weeks. And here's another one, because this is contrary to some reporting by some mainstream outlets here. Contrary to reports, Dan Marino was, capital letters, not a fan of his. And
well, I got to tell you that a lot of that stuff happened, and it happened over the last 3 weeks, like has been said. And I think a lot of it happened because Gase sided so much with Tannehill. And I think the players in the locker room, number one, there's not a lot of leadership in that locker room. Okay?
Nope.
Like, there's none. I mean, Frank, he came this year. There's only so much he could do. And Frank's always been a guy that leads by example. All right? But besides him, there ain't a lot of leadership in that locker room. There are guys who point fingers. I know for a fact the defense points fingers at the offense, okay, because you see it. You know what I mean? Yesterday in the game, Kenyon Drake broke his freaking helmet. Literally broke his freaking helmet on the ground. Slammed it shattered it into like 3 parts, okay? Cracked it like in 3 different places. And when he was being tried to be calmed down on the sidelines by multiple amount of people, he wasn't having it. And why? The guy's frustrated. You could talk about all the injuries you want, but Kenyon Drake's been healthy.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And as has Kenny Stills for most of the season. I know he missed a couple of games, but they didn't. Yeah. That's my thing with Gase. Is he kept talking about not having players, and I'm like, well, the good ones you have, you don't use. Like, okay, so you lost Jakeem Grant. Like, he wasn't really part of your game plan for several.
Jakeem Grant was a surprise.
Right.
You can't tell me you were counting on Jakeem Grant when the season started.
He was their fifth wideout. They were hardly using him in packages the first couple of weeks. Okay.
The guy finally figured out how to catch a punt. You know what I mean? Like, it took him a while to learn, and now you're bringing him as Albert Wilson was a main cog. Okay. And those offensive linemen that he brought, Kilgore. Listen, when he brought Kilgore over, I had someone who knows Kilgore tell me the guy's not that good. Okay, so he goes down the first week, and automatically you're like, wow, you know.
Well, so Sitton had a good reputation. Look, the Sitton loss was big. The William Hayes
was a big loss.
The William Hayes loss was big. It's not like he didn't have losses that were big, but also again,
I've been told that William Hayes, okay, was the leader, the only leader, the guy who would tell Ndamukong Suh, shut the F up, all right, buddy. The guy who would put people in his place, William Hayes, okay. But you can't count on these older guys all the time. Look at all of them got hurt. Okay, I mean you and that was interesting when Stephen Ross said, without using the word rebuild, if it takes 1 year, if it takes 2 years, if it takes 3 years, we have to build from the draft. Yes. Finally, the light bulb went off. Stop bringing me in. Stop bringing these older guys that Adam Gase knew and thought they could bring magic to him. You know what I mean? I was thinking about Danny Amendola yesterday, watching him play, and I turned to somebody on the sideline and go, "What the hell did Danny Amendola do this year? Like, what did he do for the Dolphins?"
Well, he led the team in receiving, which was not a good thing. And I don't blame him for that. But I mean, I think he was.
What did he do? But
no, he didn't do. Well, but that was my thing. Okay, you're right. And the issue with that is, and I love Frank. Okay, I love Frank, and I love his story, and I know you do too. But the idea that Amendola and Gore were their leading receiver and rusher this year, there's a problem. Okay.
Yeah, if it was 10 years ago, we'd be good.
Right. And the thing about it is, the reason for it is because Gase, like, the great is the enemy of the good. Like, he was only going to play guys he trusted implicitly, even though those guys were not going to make big plays for him. So yesterday he's talking at the end of the game, and his answer about third down where he basically said, we need to be first down, second down, first down, because if we get to third down and it's past a certain amount of yardage, we don't really have a play for that. We don't have a play for that? Like, really?
You don't have a play for that. Meanwhile, your quarterback was a receiver in college who was known his first few years for running the damn ball.
Mm-hmm.
So you do have a play for that. But I'm telling you, man, he hitched his wagon to Tannehill. And that was the biggest mistake that he made because the team didn't trust Tannehill. The rest of the team didn't trust him. You see the receivers all the time. I mean, I know all receivers have that look like, when they're open, whatever. But, dude, Kenny Stills would be 40 yards down the field, and I got to believe in his mind he's thinking, I'm running for nothing. Like, I'm doing this for nothing.
He was open. He was open this year. Parker never was. But Stills was –
Parker's I'm done,
yeah, well, they're done.
All right,
they're
enough
done.
Waiting for the guy,
No, they're done.
I'm surprised they didn't get rid of him. Like, he got rid of Ajayi, and he got rid of Phillips, and he got rid of all these guys. Like, what were you waiting for?
Well,
you're an offensive guru, and you know that the guy, one of the things he told us was that, everybody keeps asking about the jump ball, throw him the jump ball. He's not good at it.
Mm-hmm.
He told us that.
Right.
All right, so get rid of him. What's he doing then?
And then he had other players like a Gesicki who he didn't use as a seam tight end the entire season. And look, there's so many issues with him on offense. I think the one thing to close this on Gase is that in addition to the issues with Ross, I think it's going to come out pretty clearly here that he knew he could get another job. And so you're going to see him get hired by the Browns or the Packers or maybe the Bengals. You're going to see him
the guy goes to the Packers and he goes from being known for coaching Peyton Manning and now he has Aaron Rodgers. Brother, I think I can go coach Aaron Rodgers and keep the shit afloat. You know what I mean? To stay a certain way.
Well, I mean, that's how we got Joe Philbin, right? So yeah, he's going to end up in one of these places. But I think what we're going to find out, and I think this is a pretty broad statement, but considering you were around for all of these also, I think we're going to find out that to a degree, Adam Gase quit more than Nick Saban, Jimmy Johnson, or Bill Parcells ever did on the Dolphins. And all three of those guys quit in different ways. Like Nick quit at the end when he knew he could leave. Parcells quit when he realized he would just, it was better to play the ponies and all the rest of that than it was to really run the organization. And Jimmy quit the last year when he just wanted to trade stocks. He really didn't want to be there anymore. He'd seen his mother in the grave.
He was kind of forced to come back he was jilted into it.
Right, with Dave. They went and got Dave from Naples. But I think what you're going to find is that Gase, not over as long a period of time, but over the last 3 to 4 weeks, basically packed it in. His body language indicated it. Comments indicated it. And the players, this is a simple thing, and people fought me on this all year. The players just didn't seem to like him. And look, I'm not in that locker room like you are anymore. I went to a handful of the home games and was in the locker room then. But I used to be there every day, and so there's a lot of former players that I know very well, and I still communicate with those guys, and these are respected guys from the years where the Dolphins were good and not appreciated, and those guys were out on Adam Gase a while ago, most of them, and it's the accountability thing. The accountability thing is huge with players. If you are not going to stand up there, like for all the issues that Spo has with players at times that don't get reported because he's not great at communicating. He doesn't love conflict.
He never throws anybody under the bus.
Never throws anybody under the bus. And always, if you ask him about injuries, we have enough. We have enough. We have enough. We have enough. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's trite. It's annoying. But it's what players are expecting. Because if you don't say we have enough, then what you're basically saying is the guys you're putting in are not any good. And
you got some 4s, 5s, and 6s?
Oh, right. Remember that? I remember that. Remember, right? The receivers. I mean, this has been a consistent problem. They need a coach who is going to come in and take accountability. So let's transition. The Adam Gase era is over. I think it's for the best. Yeah. We'll see how that plays out. They put Greer in charge. Hard for me to evaluate Greer in some senses because I don't know what he's been responsible for and what he hasn't, but he seems to have – we had grinding the tape Kyle Krabs on from the Draft Network. He says Greer is very well regarded around the NFL for his eyes. So I'm willing to give that a chance as long as they go top down here. But for coach, if you were to say to Chris Greer, this is the type of coach that the Miami Dolphins need now. What do you need in terms of personality, and what do you think we need, Louis, in terms of background?
Well, I think what you need, you need a guy who is willing to build something. Not like, Stephen Ross said something pretty weird in the press conference where he said Adam Gase wanted to win now. So they kept getting free agents and guys to plug holes. Okay. Now you need a guy that's willing to say, all right, I know how we built it X place. Okay. I think we could do it here like this through the draft. Okay. You got to find a quarterback, Ethan. You need someone who can find a quarterback and use the quarterback to the best of their ability and not be afraid to run a system according to a quarterback. You know what I mean? Use the players that you have, a system, not your system. I mean, like, don't say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Let's do something according to what we have. The only way to do that is to build it, okay? And I keep going back to a guy like Lamar Jackson because, to me, I mean, that was the biggest fail of this whole thing because, you had Tannehill, who was pretty solid. You could put this guy behind him to learn, and all of a sudden you would have had your quarterback, which is exactly what Baltimore's done, right? And they've changed the way that they haven't really changed. They played defense, right? But in my opinion, it's funny, but I saw a report about the Ravens willing to trade John Harbaugh after they sign him for 3 years and then trade him. And the connection with Stephen Ross and the Harbaughs.
Yep.
That makes logical sense. Now, don't bring Joe Flacco with you.
No,
that's a waste.
No,
don't pull that because then we're in the same boat. All right, old quarterback's going to get killed back there with the offensive line and the Dolphins. No, I think I was commenting to someone over the weekend on the college system has been brought to the pros, right?
Yep.
So because that's what the colleges are putting out. That's what these quarterbacks that they're putting out. They're putting out these Baker Mayfields that can run, that can throw, that run out of the pocket and throw. And they, the breakdown plays, when things break down, they make things happen. That's what you have to look for. So you need a coach that's willing to deal with that. And you have to have a coach that's willing to take, here's the players, go do it. Not, I need this player, I need that player. No. Here's the players we're giving you, which is what Greer is now going to do, right? Tannebaum's out of the way. I don't want to hear that excuse. I'm sure Tannebaum's going to be involved in all that sports science bullshit and all that, which to me is bullshit.
That worked well. That worked well, Lou.
Yeah.
They have
those trailers. They got those relaxing trailers and shit. Yeah, give me a break. All right.
18 guys on IR. Right. That's
yeah. Great job. All right. Anyway, so that's what he's going to be in charge of, I'm sure, and all that sports science and all that crap. Greer, here you go, buddy. It's your show now. Everyone says you're a great personnel guy. You're great with the NFL people. Let's see it. Go get a coach where you could tell them, here's your guys. Go coach them.
I'm with you on that. The reason I like the John Harbaugh move, and I made this point on the last pod, that I did with Alfredo, is that I don't trust Steve Ross to find the right guy anymore unless I've seen a track record from that person. So he's gone after a first-time head coach in Gase. He's gone after a first-time head coach in Philbin. Okay, they elevated Campbell. At this stage, I've seen what John Harbaugh can do. The other thing I like about John Harbaugh is that he was a special teams coach first. And the reason I like special teams coaches as potential head coaches is they have to coach the whole roster. You don't hear them saying, well, this guy, what am I going to do with this guy? Oh, no, their whole job is to take basically 40, 53 on the roster and make something of it. And so he has to.
Well, then what about Rizzi?
Well,
Rizzi?
I've made that suggestion. He should be interviewed. Absolutely. He should be interviewed. He should be kept. I'll tell you that. Like, if he wants to stay, he should be kept. Because that was the one unit. I know Jakeem Grant's injury hurt them, but that was the one unit. What he does with the kickers, what he does with the punters, what he does with coverage. To me, that's somebody you keep. He also has the right temperament, I think, for the job. I mean, you need somebody.
I believe so.
Yeah, not one of these, sort of, again, newly minted geniuses. I mean, he's a football coach, okay? And to me, that's what you look at there. So I would be fine.
He's involved. Let me tell you something. That guy, and this is one more thing to talk about, that I noticed personally about Gase during game days on the sideline. He doesn't get his head out of the little playbook.
I know.
He doesn't go talk to the freaking guys, man. Like he just doesn't. Like, he'll sit with Tannehill and, they'll go over the little thing. But the whole rest of the game and the feel of the game of what's going on, you can't just be, head coach and offensive coordinator at the same time and not worry about like, all right, you do delegate. Obviously, you're a head coach, you have to delegate. But you got to get a feel for your team at the moment. Your defense has been getting pounded. Dude, you got to do something. You know what I mean? Like lift them up or something. And Rizzy is involved in all three.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy, right? Well, and this year, you know what? He wasn't next to him as much, I noticed. He wasn't next to Coach Gase on the sidelines as much. He kind of went off to the side when in years past he's been right next to him, which, I don't know. I couldn't really tell you. I know Rizzy has always been the same guy, and I haven't heard anything bad about him from any of the players. So, I just throw his name out there.
I threw it out a couple weeks ago. I threw it out a couple weeks ago. I think it's a good move, Lou.
When you do a rebuild, man, you want to rebuild. I understand, but maybe the guy's right in front of you, and they don't even notice.
Yeah, no, I think they should certainly interview him, no question. I just saw that they've requested permission to talk to Flores, the defensive coordinator of the Patriots. Now, the problem there is that Patriots offensive and defensive coordinators have not had a lot of success as head coaches. Charlie Weiss, Romeo Cornell.
I know you're slouching right now, Ethan.
What's that? What do you mean?
Matt Patricia with the slouching. I know.
Yeah. Well, Patricia, Cornell, Weiss, McDaniels. It's not exactly a murderer's row. There are people, Mangini.
No. We got Charlie Weiss at the Gators for like a year or something.
No,
that was exciting.
He got paid about $35 million for that. The other thing I would look at too, honestly, they're going to obviously have to honor the Rooney Rule, and I'm sure that's something that Chris Greer is going to demand, as he should, because he's going to be the last black lead executive in the league after, now that Reggie McKenzie's out, and, now you've also got, the retirement of Ozzie Newsome, who's been one of the best for the past 15, 20 years. So that's something that certainly you've got to look at. And there are a lot of candidates out there. What's a little bit crazy about this sort of, Black Monday is, it's been a little too literal. Right?
Yeah.
Marvin Lewis, Steve Wilkes.
Joseph.
Vance Joseph got 2 years in Denver. You could look at bringing Vance back perhaps as a defensive coordinator. I would not bring
Todd Bowles. I'd bring back Todd Bowles in a heartbeat.
Right.
I'm calling him right now and saying, listen, you're going to be our defensive coordinator, period. The guy was great. The guy should have really been considered seriously for the head coaching job here, and he wasn't. And he was already here.
Yeah, no, that's right. And you could honestly, if you brought him in with a head coach that he knows, that the head coach is comfortable with him, you could make him assistant head coach in charge of the defense too, and actually have that unit taken care of, better than it has been. Has Burke been officially fired yet as we're doing this podcast? We were told that was happening today. Is he still?
I don't believe so. It's very hard for me to see if Gase got fired and he's the one that elevated Matt Burke, and that's his guy.
No, he's getting fired. I just don't know if it's happened yet. All right, so let's pivot, off of the Dolphins here. I want to do just 5 minutes on the Canes and what happened yesterday.
All right, first let me tell you, Ethan. I found out, on the sidelines. I'm on the sideline. They come to me. Did you hear what happened? Mark Richt retired, and the first thing that I tweeted was Manny Diaz, call Billy Donovan. Mm-hmm. He knows how to handle this situation.
Right.
I was kind of joking, but the first thing I thought of, Mark Richt just screwed Manny Diaz.
Yep.
Because he screwed him, and boom, it happened. And I'm very happy because, man, you talk to Manny Diaz, and the guy is, he's a head coach. Why do it at Temple when you can freaking do it here in Miami? And I'm glad they made that decision. But there's a lot more to it. Go ahead, Ethan. I'll try to fill
yeah. I want to get to sort of how it played out. At first, I think it's only fair that Temple, after giving us Al Golden, lost out on this one. But the reason that I like this is because Manny he embodies that program. And so to me, you want somebody who has the energy, to really bring this thing back. And it was just clear Rick didn't anymore. And you also want the thing I loved today when he was on with Joe Rose was he was talking about, he's like, I'm not even going to call defensive plays. He's like, I'm going to let our guys do it, and I'm going to go get an offensive coordinator. And those are two things that Mark Richt would not have done. He was not going to get an offensive coordinator, and I want to get to the backstory on this, or not at least not one who could challenge him in any way. And he was insistent upon calling the plays as a head coach. So already,
does that sound familiar?
Well, right. Well, Richt and Gase, all year long I said this. Like, you cannot – head coaches, okay, unless you're Andy Reid. Andy Reid, to me, and Sean Payton at this stage, and he's got Breeze. All right, those two guys are exempt. But this idea of head coaches who are either not that good at it or are not that experienced as head coaches also calling the plays where they're not paying attention to the rest of the team, it doesn't make any sense to me. Too much. Yep. All right, so give me some backstory here before we go.
All right. So Manny Diaz, to me, first of all, always seemed like head coaching material. I think, remember we spoke about when they were talking about a head coach in waiting, that I thought that was bullshit. But that should have been a wink, you're the head coach in waiting without having to announce it, okay? Manny Diaz should have never been allowed. And I said this. I said should have done everything they could to keep Manny Diaz. They should have never allowed him to be able to leave, right? And that obviously comes with money. Now, the buyout was $4 million from Temple. Okay, the buyout for Cristobal was $10 million. Okay, and for a fact they would have probably gone after Cristobal because he's had head coaching experience. Manny has no head coaching experience, and that's a big thing when you're talking about colleges. Okay, universities, you really don't want a guy without head coaching experience. But in this case, I mean, Miami's not I don't think it's the job that they think it is anymore, And it should be because of all the athletes that you can get here. And like you said, man, you need that young, energetic guy, the guy who's going to go out there and sell the program. I know Mark Richt, they say he's a great person and this and that, but we've talked about it before. I always said, I follow Mark Richt since the SEC, since I'm a Florida guy. He never won shit. And when he came here, Miami fans were like, oh, we got Mark Richt. Guess what? You got Mark Richt by default. Why? Because he had already quit at Georgia. You know what I mean? He wanted to quit at Georgia. So what he did here, he was done with it, man. He was probably like sour because they got rid of him, and he said, I jumped right into my alma mater, But it wasn't in him. It's kind of like the Jimmy Johnson departure. It wasn't in him anymore.
And Parcells. I mean, and every free agent.
And hey, man, you can retire. You can do that when you get older and you don't feel like doing it anymore. Why do I need to do this? I got all the money, blah, blah, blah.
But they all come here, Lou. That's the thing. They come here to retire. Like, this has been the issue with the Florida Panthers for years. Like, until this year with Mike Hoffman, like, they've had so much trouble finding a good free agent because it's basically like been a bunch of guys in their 30s, like from Joe Newendike on down. Yeah. Like, I'm going to come play golf here in South Florida. Like, that's why I think when they had someone with that kind of energy who wanted desperately to be at that program, it makes total sense. And look, I know Cristobal would have been an option if not for the buyout. I know Mario. I know Mario wanted.
Yeah, but let me ask you a question though. With Cristobal, would he want to? I mean, I know he'd want to coach at Miami, but I mean, at this point, isn't his job better than Miami? I mean, his
job is better in part because, and they also have all the money in the world because it's Nike money. But it is better. But I do know from talking to some people who've communicated with him directly over the past couple of days that he would have absolutely come home. But you had the buyout. You were going to have to wait on him because of it to get the number down. And to me, like, as much as I respect him and I wish things had worked out for him better at FIU and everything else that had played out there, if you can get Diaz back, just get Diaz back. Like, what I don't understand, and we'll close here. What I don't understand is Canes fans are never happy. Like, and somebody, I forgot who tweeted this out, okay, but somebody on that, but totally right. Maybe it might have been Will or somebody else like that. Tweeted out like, okay, so like 2 weeks ago you were all pissed that Manny was leaving and hoping he would come back in 2 years to be the head coach. And now you got him back 2 years early and everybody's pissed that they didn't do a national search. What?
I don't know. I don't buy that. I don't buy that. That might be a couple of people on Twitter. I don't buy that. I think everybody's happy that he's back. I just think, like, people didn't think it could happen like that. Like, things don't happen. And I mentioned Billy Donovan. That shit never happens. Right. Where the guy's like, I changed my mind. I'm coming back. All right? Well, he had the opportunity to come back. And let me tell you one last thing on this. If I'm him, and I know the thing is he doesn't have a relationship with the guy, and nobody at that program has a relationship at the right levels, Ken Dorsey needs to be your offensive coordinator. You need to make that fucking call right now and get him. I mean, App State, really? You got Ken Dorsey? Right. And you could bring them here. You got to put the egos aside. And I understand that college football and pro football is a lot about relationships and who you know and all that. But dude, if they don't bring that guy back here, that's a huge mistake. All right, that's a pretty big mistake, because you talk about a guy who did the most with not the most talent like that he had, that to use the talent around him, which is supposedly what Miami has on offense.
Yep.
Well, that's the guy you need to go get.
Right.
But it ain't gonna happen because Blake James doesn't have a relationship with the guy. Right? Manny doesn't have a relationship. Manny doesn't have the ego. That's the other thing. When you were talking about Manny, he doesn't have the ego of a head coach. He just seems like he like you said, he'll do the right things when it comes to making, letting people make decisions. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He's not going to be pig-headed about things. I really believe that, and I think he'll be successful. He'll be open to change. You know what I mean? This program right now. And I think we talked about this before. You have 3 quarterbacks suspended. I mean, those are quarterbacks, dude. Those are supposed to be the kids that are like leaders. Somebody dropped the ball in the research on some of these quarterbacks back to high school. You know what I'm saying? Like the personality of a quarterback. Somebody dropped the ball, and they're paying for it now. And you better hope that they find. Fans better hope that they find a quarterback.
Well, I feel like it's the same. I mean, we're ending where we started because, as much as I'm in favor of what Steve Ross did today, and I'm in favor of what Blake James did, like I think in both cases they made largely the right decisions. Ultimately, how they came to it, not the best, okay, but ultimately the right decisions. But ultimately, we're talking about the same thing. Until either of those programs, the Dolphins or the Hurricanes, find a quarterback, it's not going to be good around here. It's
not going to be good.
That is what Chris Greer, that is number one thing that needs to happen here is how do we get a quarterback? I don't care about the rest of it. We'll build leaders from within the locker room. We have to get a quarterback because what we saw with the Dolphins is, and you mentioned this, if you don't have a quarterback and the players check out because they know they don't have a quarterback, then all of it falls apart. And
it all falls apart.
And you talked about, and that happened with the defense with the Canes this year too. They knew they didn't have a quarterback. They played as well as they could. They held up their end, unlike the Dolphins defense. They held up their end, but ultimately it gets you. You mentioned Tannehill. It's not just this group that didn't believe in him. It was Mike Wallace.
It's been 7 years of it. It's been 7 years of it.
It was Brian Hartline who didn't believe in him ultimately. It was all of those guys ultimately didn't believe in him. And so both teams get a freaking quarterback. Whatever it takes to get a quarterback, get a quarterback. All right, you can follow him.
One last note on UM. There might be bigger moves coming at the top of that school, like president-wise. Look out for that news coming soon, and that could affect a lot about the athletic, how the athletic program goes too. Because I'm understanding that the current president will not be renewed. So,
wow,
just throwing that out there.
Wow. And you're giving that to the final minute of a 5 Reasons Sports podcast.
Yeah, because you know what, man,
setting it to the Herons.
It's all that stuff because the board members and all that, they're the ones that pick the president. So they're not looking real good right now because apparently the president ain't doing much, and he doesn't like it here. And apparently a lot of stuff is happening, which may have accelerated Blake James' hiring process a little bit as well.
You heard it first on 5 Reasons. We're also covering local politics and other things like that now. All right, follow him at the Wawitos. He's Luis Zabala. We don't know if we're letting Whittingham come back in the country after he shirked responsibility.
No music, bro. I can't believe no music. Couldn't get some freestyle, some old school Stevie B or Johnny O or something? We could have
Stevie B.
Spring Love. Can we do that?
No.